Antarctica. The worst weather on Earth threatens an expedition, rushing to escape before winter closes in.
There's a sense that if you don't get out of the wind and the cold, that you'll die very quickly.
Tornadoes. When twisters bear down on the Texas Panhandle, the weather report is a matter of life and death.
Turned up the television so I could hear it downstairs and took to the basement.
Flash floods. A storm swells an Appalachian Creek into a torrent that sweeps a boatload of children overboard. Powerful storms, and the people who survive them. Coming up on Storm Warning. Harsh, inhospitable. Antarctica, the bottom of the Earth. In the perpetual darkness of the winter season, temperatures average 60 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Winds howl over mountain peaks at more than 70 miles per hour. Cruel weather like this has dashed the dreams of the hardiest explorers, but there are always more willing to brave these treacherous conditions.
We went on this expedition because Antarctica is enticing and because this enormous mountain range had its highest peaks unclimbed.
Geologist Greg Mortimer and filmmaker Chris Hilton trained long and hard to join an Australian team of adventurers. They were determined to be the first to climb the highest peak in Antarctica's Admiralty Range, the 13,000-foot Mount Minto.
Yeah, the main unknowns of when we set out on the expedition was what the weather would be like, what would the storms be like, because you can never know that.
In the footsteps of the great early explorers, the Australians choose to sail south. The team sets out at the start of the 6-week Antarctic summer. Before reaching land, they must navigate the constantly changing pack ice surrounding the continent.
You have to wait till the summer, till the ice is melted, and we didn't have an ice-breaking ship, so we had to steer our way around the ice flows.
In this time-lapse view from space, the constant shifting of pack ice is evident. Driven by the wind and tides, the ice can trap the vessel and crush it before the explorers ever reach land. In 1914, British explorer Ernest Shackleton met such a fate. His ship was crushed in the ice flow. This time, the pack ice closes in as the expedition nears the continent. The anxious crew scans the horizon for a passage.
Spend a couple of hours skirting around the edge of the ice pack, looking for a clear run. And we're heading directly into the ice pack now. We think we've got a reasonably good lead to get us through to the other side and clear water.
Ice surrounds the ship until it can no longer move. The party is trapped. Now weather information is critical.
And we are unable to move, over.
Roger. I understand you need weather ice support. You're in ice and unable to move at this time.
It certainly made you feel like the explorers of old, like Shackleton, who got stuck in the ice in 1914 and whose ship was eventually sunk, and they spent the whole winter in Antarctica.
After 3 unnerving days, the winds shift. The ice breaks up. The ship is freed. On the other side of the pack ice, fin whales greet the explorers. The team finally sets foot on Antarctica. But precious time has been lost. The ship will leave without them if they don't climb the mountain and get back before the brutal winter closes in.
We only had a very small window of time in which we could sail in, climb the mountain and then sail out again safely.
Now the team must cross nearly 100 miles of ice and blowing snow, battling the harshest conditions on the planet to reach the mountain they intend to climb.
Antarctica is the coldest and windiest place in the world.
Lee Klinger studies this dangerous climate for the U.S. National Center for Atmospheric Research.
A blizzard in Antarctica summers can involve sustained winds in excess of 50, 60 miles an hour for weeks at a time. Temperatures on the same order of magnitude as some of our coldest winters, 50, 60 below, in there, again, summertime. The problems with exploring and climbing in Antarctica is you don't have the friendly weatherman's forecast to be able to predict blizzards.
Progress is much slower than anticipated. With just 5 days left before the explorers must turn back, the team cuts supplies to lighten the load.
I'd estimate that we'd be back at the head of Edisto Inlet on the 24th of February. Over.
After 2 weeks fighting the wind and cold, the climbers make camp at the base of Mount Minto. They have just 2 days left to conquer the summit.
We brought up here enough food for a couple of days, and we've just about run out. This is our last ditch today.
Here, Antarctica's legendary blizzards catch up with them.
When you're in an Antarctic blizzard, you feel naked, really. You feel like you have to find immediate shelter. You know, there's a sense that if you don't get out of the wind and the cold and the blowing snow, that you'll die very quickly.
When we come back, the Antarctic adventurers face the blizzard as time runs out. And later, chasing killer storms in Tornado Alley. Ferocious winds and biting cold tear relentlessly at the Australian climbing team, attempting the first ascent of the highest peak in Antarctica's Admiralty Range.
When nature whips up a storm like that, it just makes you feel incredibly vulnerable and incredibly small.
It is now the last possible day to climb Mount Minto and still make it back to their boat. Otherwise, the expedition risks being trapped by a wall of immovable pack ice.
The air temperature was about 0 degrees -5 Fahrenheit. But with the wind, it was like -30. And it feels like your skin's going to freeze. Like any piece of exposed skin on your face is going to have the blood freeze in it.
The climbers are buffeted by fierce katabatic winds. These winds form when dense, cold air masses in Antarctica's upper altitudes rush down to warmer regions of the continent. The 40-knot winds and sub-zero temperatures cause cameras to jam and make film break. Still, after 10 grueling hours, the 6 climbers conquer the summit. But time is the enemy. 100 miles away, their only means of escape is already preparing to sail.
Yes, we're all well, and yesterday we climbed Mount Minto. Yesterday we climbed Mount Minto. Over.
The situation is this, Greg. The weather forecasts for the next few days are not good. The outlook for ice is not good. And we would like to get you back to the ship as soon as we possibly can. Did you read that, over?
There is no pause for celebration. Winter is closing in. The team is exhausted. Frostbite has taken a toll.
We were racing to get back to the ship on time. And we got down into really close weather where you could hardly see the hand on the end of your arm.
We're potentially in a really nasty situation. Everyone's getting increasingly tired each day. We're in the middle of a storm. We've still got 100 kilometres to go back to the coast.
They cut the sled in half to further lighten the load. And with time running out, the boat's crew asks a nearby Greenpeace ship for assistance.
Greenpeace is standing off Cape Hellad, only a mile or two, and they are willing to take a helicopter in to bring you out as soon as the weather clears.
At the last possible moment, the storm passes.
They saved us a 5-day walk and helped us avoid staying the whole winter in Antarctica, which we would have had to have done if we'd been 5 days later.
The men return to the relative comfort and safety of the ship.
Being back on the little ship after being inland for a month was like a 5-star luxury liner.
But as the boat heads for Sydney, Australia, they face yet another treacherous storm. For 5 days, they are battered by huge waves and 100-mile-per-hour winds.
The worst storm I've ever seen anywhere. More than anything else I've ever seen in the mountains anywhere in the world.
The storms force the expedition to change course and land in New Zealand. It is the end of an epic journey.
There was several life and death situations, and they were mostly to do with the weather and the forces of nature.
You know, when I think back on it, it's still frightful, and we were lucky to survive.
Up next, storm chasers must warn a town of impending doom. And torrential rain puts an entire river valley underwater. It's the storm season in the Texas Panhandle.
We've had numerous reports of a tornado on the ground. We started getting reports on this mine.
The time when people like Thelma Gafford are glued to the weather reports.
In several Donley counties, this storm has had a history of tornadoes. There was a warning in Donley County, a tornado warning that has since been dropped.
This is Tornado Alley, 1,200 square miles of America's heartland. Between March and July, it is lashed by more tornadoes, severe thunderstorms, and hail strikes than any other place on Earth.
Everything we do revolves around the weather forecast. Tornadoes are deadly. They don't care who you are, what you have, and they should be respected and feared, and we need to be informed.
Thelma's town of Memphis is so used to tornadoes that the football team's mascot is a twister. Weather forecasts can mean the difference between life and death.
Hello, everybody. I'm meteorologist Jason Laney. This just into us here at Storm Surge 7.
So this TV weatherman doesn't work alone.
Here's what we got from the morning. Right now, I know it's beautiful out there, clear skies. This is the latest radar picture.
To get accurate reports, he's created a team to be his eyes and ears in the field.
Where do you think we ought to go today? I know a lot about weather. I'm the trained meteorologist, but I'm not the trained chaser. You learn from the masters.
I'll probably head out, try to pick it up around south of Clovis somewhere and follow it wherever it may go.
I'm going to set up around Dalhart.
Let's go do it.
All right.
When these experts at finding weather decide where they think a twister-spawning storm may be, they hit the road. Doug Black has been chasing down tornadoes for 15 years.
I will get an idea from Jason Laney. He will pinpoint me on where this storm or this storm may be. And then to get my shot, I have to read the storm, read the structure of a storm, and know where I want to shoot.
Sometimes the twisters swirl as close as 100 yards.
When you get this close to a tornado, I don't think it matters how many you've been around. You cannot sit there and observe a tornado this close without shaking in fear.
To get his hard-won pictures back to the station fast, Black loads video images into a laptop computer and transmits them over a cell phone. As Laney receives the incoming images, he sometimes grows concerned for his colleagues.
My nightmare would be a situation where a storm chaser is in position to get perfect video, but also in a position where it is potentially dangerous, because this is a dangerous profession. worst case scenario, a tornado that takes a right-hand turn towards where the chaser is located. That chaser can't get away from it. Is this thing high precip or low precip?
This guy is a major mesocyclone, beautiful storm.
So you can see what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, this is a long track.
Now, we don't want to alarm anybody, but just give you some idea what the cloud looks like right now.
The teamwork may push the envelope of risk, but the results are faster, more accurate reports.
Tornado watch, extreme eastern panhandle.
Jason Laney is very quick to warn the viewers and tell us to seek shelter.
One rainy night, when Thelma's town is approached by a dangerous thunderstorm, Laney's team is in pursuit. The lightning from the storm illuminates the landscape, highlighting a massive tornado.
Let me talk to the weather office. We can get a confirmed tornado on the ground.
The storm chasers report to Laney. Laney alerts the public.
No more than a mile and a half outside of town. In amongst the lightning flashes, we've had numerous reports of a tornado on the ground.
Jason Laney was cutting in on the programming, and I realized something is going to break loose.
Thelma knows from his warning that a tornado is near.
So I turned up the television so I could hear it downstairs, grabbed a jug of water out of the refrigerator and a bag of crackers, took to the basement.
Ten minutes later, the tornado clips the southern edge of Memphis. But having been warned, the people of the town are hunkered down in their shelters. No one is hurt. Thanks to meteorological teamwork,
We know we're going to get some heavy downpours out of the individual thunderstorms.
the people in this corner of Tornado Alley can rest just a little bit easier, as long as they keep their TV sets on.
Material things, nothing. But if you can save life, then that's what it's all about.
Tornado watch, extreme eastern panhandle, western parts of Oklahoma, stretching into Kansas, Newman, now Oklahoma City to north of Dallas.
Up next, a river rescue gone wrong puts a boatload of children in peril. Rushing streams sweep downhill in Appalachia, a mountainous region in the eastern United States with a history of disastrous floods.
The biggest mistake is building in areas where it's flood prone. That's the biggest mistake. And the other is not having a healthy respect for Mother Nature, especially water.
David Brown is a part of the U.S. Geological Survey's flood management team in West Virginia.
One thing, it's the velocity of the stream or the flood water, and it's also the debris that it carries with it. That combination just creates like a battering ram. When something hits you, it's not only the force of the water, but it's a solid object hitting you too.
Swift-moving water can easily pull a strong adult beneath the surface. But most people underestimate the power of water.
Come on, guy.
Billy Jo Sowards and her son Dustin live next to a creek in Hurricane, West Virginia. Normally, the creek is barely a trickle. But one March, a severe storm builds in the Appalachian Mountains. By nightfall, the area is deluged with rain. Residents wake to a flood.
By 10 o'clock, it was up in the field and everything. About 10:30, it was up on the trailers. And the first trailer had started rocking. I don't know if it broke loose or what, but it started rocking.
As the waters rise, families become cut off from one another by the steadily rising creek.
When I left, the water was in my driveway.
Among the volunteer firefighters on scene is Alan Paxson.
We all had a basic swiftwater survival training. We didn't have any true swiftwater rescue because the creek that we have, you can normally walk through and not get your knees wet. And here all of a sudden it was a raging river.
The rescuers fear the families are hopelessly stranded. Their only way out is a submerged bridge. They must get the children out of the elements. The volunteer firefighters devise a plan. A small boat is rigged between two trees to ferry the children across the rising floodwaters. Parents and children feel secure.
My son always wanted to be a pirate.
But the waiting rescuers don't know what they are up against. One misstep could sweep them downstream.
It doesn't take very much water moving at 3 or 4 or 5 miles an hour to sweep a car away. And we've seen evidence of that in almost every flood.
This flood is no different. As the firemen pull against the powerful current, the boat begins to fill with freezing water and is quickly swamped. The children are being swept into the creek by the treacherous current. Billy Joe reacts with a mother's instinct. She rushes to pass an infant off to a volunteer, then goes for her own child.
They told me to stay on the bridge, don't go, when I broke loose, and I said, I gotta go, my kid's in there.
Just as he's about to be swept out of sight, Billy Joe's son, Dustin, is hauled in by a fireman. Billy Joe struggles to help a rescuer relay her son to shore.
I couldn't stand there, I just had to jump in. And if it had washed on down, I would have went with him. We would have hung onto a tree or went under or something. I couldn't leave him.
The rescuers themselves are the last to be pulled back to safety. Now they are forced to find another way out. The children are soaked and chilled to the bone, but the creek is still rising. The volunteers and flood victims must hike over a mountain to a distant road. Alan Paxson carries a toddler the entire way.
He was a real friendly little boy. Played with my beard all the way out and talked to me. So I had to carry him on out. He was my buddy.
After a long, cold trudge, the party reaches safety. The ordeal has given survivors and their rescuers a newfound respect for weather's power to swell gentle streams.
We're going to move because I'm afraid I'll be at work one day and they'll be here by themselves and they can't get out.
It's made me see the need that we definitely need more swift water rescue training. You know, if people don't use common sense, then you're going to get hurt.